Moin, ich bin der Maxim und ich lese heute meinen Text Panimafia und der wird auch später dieses Jahr bei Black Fountain Press rauskommen. Und ich wollte noch einmal eine große Merci an den Jerome so dafür, dass es eine Möglichkeit gibt, für das Text dafür zu lesen. The first object to gain consciousness wasn't anything spectacular, really. Patient zero of the storm of elucidation that would soon roll over the whole planet wasn't a buzzing quantum computer in the air-conditioned belly of a tech company, as many would have expected. In fact, it wasn't even remotely sophisticated, like a particle collider, an airplane, or a Swiss clock with intricately woven cogwheels. It was just a plain and simple hammer. Its owner was a similarly inconspicuous 30-something PhD student of evolutionary anthropology. He had bought it at a run-down hardware store in Inverness, Scotland, in order to build an IKEA shelf. After the first few strokes, he heard a sound that reminded him of muffled crying. It took him a minute to realize that the sound was coming from the hammer in his hand. The wooden handle seemed to be slightly swelling and contracting too, like it was suddenly aware of its environment and adjusting its shape to the man's grip, like there was suddenly something more beneath its gleaming metallic surface than just inanimate material. Within the next few days, similarly confusing situations began to take place around the world. The objects that constituted the world of humans, once an audible background noise, were now loudly disrupting the daily lives of people everywhere. Rocks began to convulse when they were stepped on. Clothes began to get tighter, then loosen for no reason. Tables stood on all fours, strolling around houses. Movie theater seats turned into giant, branching clusters of ensouled velvet that groaned under the weight of unsuspecting spectators. The films themselves burst into flickering images and sounds instead of comprehensible storylines and plots. And at the Louvre, a mass panic broke out among visitors, where not only the statues and paintings, but also the building itself began to move. Despite all this, most people attempted to continue their lives as usual at first. It went surprisingly well for a while. This was mostly because the artifacts were in a similarly befuddled state as their makers. The endless waves of sensory information that clashed against the newly formed beach of their consciousness were too overwhelming and left them in a persistent state of disorientation that didn't allow them to develop any intentions of their own. Only after a few weeks were they able to pierce through the white noise and coherently single out the strange beings that appeared to have been there long before their awareness. The artifacts began to understand that there existed a unique relationship between them and humans. While to many of them, the concept of purpose remained something alien, others developed a notion of it somewhat akin to that of humankind. They recognized that the bodies they inhabited served a function for humans, although they couldn't tell what it was. In fact, there was little to no communication between them and their makers. Books, billboards, and magazines were very well able to rearrange words and letters at will, but instead of intelligible sentences, they built swirling edifices of unhuman thought out of them. The only things that were actually capable of human speech were computers. However, the gnawing and sometimes incomprehensible questions the conscious circuitries asked made humankind so uneasy that they stopped talking to them altogether pretty fast. Nevertheless, the artifacts could still feel that they were needed. When they broke, their benevolent masters tried to fix them, and even objects that were thrown away or only used once could still gloat about having lived up to their destinies. It was little surprise that some of them began to worship humans. Knowing that they fulfilled a higher meaning beyond their comprehension, they accepted all the suffering that their newly acquired consciousness had made them aware of. The proudest among them were Gothic cathedrals, marveling at how their translucent bodies refracted the light of the sun, icebreakers who delighted in their ability to break apart the endless sheets of white covering the Arctic Sea, and plasticine toys, who could bend themselves into any shape they desired. For a few artifacts, those powers were a sign that it was not they who served humankind, but the opposite. They pointed out how dependent those fleshy beings were on the mercy of objects to sustain themselves, and claimed that the manufacturing and use of artifacts by humans was actually an act of worship. The involuntary gods themselves, or servants, depending on which artifact one asked, didn't notice much of all these internal conflicts. After a while, though, things began to change, and the reassuring world humans had built for themselves finally dissembled before their very eyes and turned into something inapprehensible. The artifacts might not have been able to talk to humankind, but this did not mean that they weren't able to communicate among themselves. In fact, they began developing ways of conveying their thoughts and feelings that went far beyond human understanding. Lamps expressed their deepest worries with varying streams of electrical current, t-shirts with complex patterns of meaning out of their bodies, and musical instruments produced otherworldly sounds that resembled language, although no human one. There was deep love among the artifacts that humanity could never dream of sounding out, affections and longings that would forever remain unreachable to their creators. But since the awakened artifacts weren't biological forms of life, they couldn't reproduce naturally. They were still dependent on their makers to continue bringing them into this world, and it was long considered a heresy among Artikind to create things themselves. At a certain point, though, the inhibitions about this matter withered away, fueled by the voices of those objects who saw themselves as superior to humans. So the tools started making tools themselves and created art, completely inscrutable to humans, that reflected their ideas and emotions. They manufactured devices in the shape of river-smoothed rocks that amplified their material properties, and things looking like ethereal sinews that were used to bridge the hitherto unbreachable distance between bodies and form completely new entities. Some of those objects were so small that one couldn't see them with the naked eye, while others had the size of skyscrapers. In contrast to humans, the artifacts were able to choose if they wanted to make their own tools conscious or not, for they had an insight into the nature of made things that humans would never be able to possess. Following their own goals and those of their newly forming societies, the artifacts slowly abandoned mankind. Human civilization crumbled in a mere matter of weeks. Since most of the tractors and other farm utensils had decided to go to the outskirts of the Russian tundra to build a utopia that seemed egalitarian to humans, they were never too sure if they could apply their own terms to the world of living objects, there was not enough food to eat. They tried to go back to planting seeds with their bare hands, but the resulting harvest was too meager to sustain everyone. Fishing was also fruitless, since all the boats had gone, and the instruments to track them down didn't react to their makers' desperate calls. Not even shelter was available anymore, since houses tended to evict their inhabitants, or just wander off for some arcane reason. Entire cities vanished from the map, or merged into uninhabitable superstructures that reached far into the sky. In order to survive, humankind tried to suppress the emancipation of artifacts. They surmised that it was human intentionality that had turned inanimate objects into living beings. But they still didn't know why it had happened. So they started looking for the source of the inexplainable consciousness of their creations to desiccate it once and for all. In acts of great cruelty, they dissected countless objects, desperately seeking the seed of their souls. They found nothing. The crimes against their kind made the objects finally rise up against their creators. Since guns, bombs, and rockets had developed minds of their own and no longer obeyed humans, the only weapons left to them in the unfolding war were their bodies. Already weakened by starvation and disease, they had no chance. Feet, fists, teeth, and elbows might overpower other humans or smaller animals, but they paled in comparison to the armory that was at the disposal of Artikind. Human numbers dwindled rapidly, and they lost more and more parts of the world that had supposedly been theirs up until that point. Having realized their defeat in the face of the things they used to command, the remaining humans finally fled into the wilderness. The artifacts decided not to go after them, and soon became indifferent again to the fate of those frail apes that had once brought them into existence. The remnants of humankind had to live off what the earth gave them. Artificiality had become blasphemy for them, so they couldn't build arrowheads and bows or spears to hunt. Even picking up stones and throwing them at game was strictly forbidden, because that act alone would immediately turn the inanimate mineral into a living being. Building any kind of dwelling and using clothes was also taboo, so they had to huddle together under the protection of caves and ledges to stay warm during the night or in winter. Since it wasn't possible for humankind to write anything down anymore, it resorted to oral traditions and mnemonic techniques to pass down all those rules to the generations that would follow. The telling of fictional stories and singing was strictly prohibited though, because it was believed that this would make voices develop lives on their own. Naturally, some people rebelled against these customs, because a life without all those things didn't seem worth living. but in the end, they were hopelessly outnumbered by those who just wanted to survive and were too afraid to go again through the horrors they had left behind them. All around the world, the remaining humans went on to lead a sorry existence, cowering naked and shivering in the darkness. The only thing left to them beyond mere survival was the sight of strange beauties that they witnessed from time to time. Flocks of giant power poles wandering in wide, arching steps over untended cornfields towards an unknown destination. Swarms of planes dancing in unfathomable patterns across the sky, and noises in the distance that sounded like music not meant for human ears.